Hello and welcome to LifeTalk with Mariette. I'm your host, Mariette Camera. What kindness means to me, that is our topic today. Why does it matter? When we understand that kindness is learned, not guaranteed, we stop assuming intent. We become more aware of ourselves, of others, of what still needs work. And that awareness is often where kindness actually begins. So let's get started. You're tuned into Life Talk. I'm Mariette Camera. What kindness means to me, that's our topic. So kindness to me is not automatic. It's something, it's not something everyone simply has inside of them. You're usually shaped one of two ways. And this is what I learned. Either you were brought up in a home where kindness was modeled by your mom and dad, by your family, not talked about, not explained, just lived. You watched how your parents treated each other, how they spoke when they were tired, how they handled frustration, disappointments, or disagreements. Kindness became second nature because it was normal. Or you didn't grow up that way at all. And then kindness became something you had to learn in later years. What kindness is not a given, and why kindness is not a given. Many people assume kindness is instinctive. It isn't. If you grow up without seeing it, you don't magically know how to practice and how to handle it. You might know what politeness looks like. I knew what politeness and distance looked like when I grew up, because that was very much in society. People were polite to one another, but distance. You might know how to behave in public, but true kindness, especially under stress, has to be learned. And for many people, life becomes the teacher. Some of us learn kindness through being misunderstood, being treated harshly, being ignored when we needed care, or realizing later in life how your own behavior affected others. This is one point that I can relate to. Realizing later in life how our own behavior affected others. I can relate to that very, very, very well. Kindness then becomes a choice. Yes, it did, not a reflex. You stop reacting the way you were taught. You pause. You correct yourself. You do better, sometimes clumsily, sometimes slowly. The truth we don't say often enough is not everyone has kindness inside of them in the same way. Some people never learned it. Some people shut it down as a survival tool. And some people confuse control, bluntness, or emotional distance with strength. I can relate to that as well. That doesn't make them bad people, but it does explain behavior. And why this matters? When we understand that kindness is learned, not guaranteed, we stop assuming intent. We become more aware of ourselves, of others, or what still needs work. And that awareness is often where kindness actually begins. And what I personally learned just in the last 48 hours by having a conversation where there are different generations involved. And I just never thought of it, even though I have shows about behavior, learned behavior, um, all different things, but I just didn't think of it. And it's almost like a light bulb went on. and I want to share it with you because this is important. How kindness is viewed across generations. That's an eye opener because one thing leads into another. Now, the greatest generation, those are the people are born between 1901 and 1927, as you know, they saw kindness, or they interpreted kindness as duty and restraint. Kindness was shown through actions, not words. You worked, you endured, you didn't complain. Showing up was kindness, providing was kindness, keeping emotions in check was considered respectful. Feelings were private, survival came first. The silent generation, born 1928 through 1945, to them, kindness was politeness and order. This generation valued manners, respect, and keeping the peace. Don't burden others, don't make scenes, be considerate by being quiet. Kindness often meant not expressing discomfort. And my dear friends, between the greatest generation and the silent generation, this is exactly what I learned. This is the picture of my parents, their generation, and what I saw every single day. And how they raised their children is exactly what they passed on to the children, to us, to myself, is exactly what I read in those two. So I didn't learn much about kindness. I learned a lot about being polite to others and respectful, polite, and with distance. There was no such thing in my family talking about kindness ever. But here's the thing. My mother very quietly, always gave to other human beings in form of food, what she produced in the garden, her vegetables, her fruit. She always had something for other people. She didn't make a big deal about it. I remember one time as a kid, because I thought about this show last night, how I would put it together. And I remember my mother had a colleague, a work colleague, and my mother had just every year twice a year they would go to a farmer and have sausages made and everything, and meat cut to the right cut to freeze and make sausages and so forth. And I remember my mother telling me how much appreciative her work colleague was when she gave her a couple of sausages. And that was a big deal at that time. We're talking about in the 60s, late 50s, early 60s. And I was a little kid. I was maybe 10 years old. That was the only time when I heard my mother talk about what she had done, what she had experienced. And it touched my mother very deeply. So it is so true. The older generation, especially, I repeat, the greatest generation and the silent generation, they didn't talk very much about anything. They just did it. Either they did or they didn't. So, and I'm sure if I sit down and I think further on this, I come up with other things too. What I remember, they just didn't talk about it. But one thing I did not learn to consciously, okay, Marietta, today we're going to the homeless shelter. We're going to help them cook soup. We're going to bring them vegetables. We're going to do this, that, and the other. That I don't remember. That to me would be conscious kindness or a constant conscious effort to help other people, because I would remember that. So this wasn't in me. This wasn't in me at all. Baby boomers, 1946 to 1964, I belonged to that group. Kindness and fairness equals responsibility. So boomers began questioning authority, but still carried structure. Be decent, be reliable, treat people right. So kindness was often tied to doing the right thing, even if emotions weren't fully addressed. I remember that. Generation X, born in 1965 through 1980. Kindness meant to them, don't judge me, don't control me. Many Gen Xers grew up self-reliant. Give me space, be honest, don't interfere. Kindness looks like respecting independence, not hovering. I get that. And you know what that led to? All other thoughts. And I have never uh, thought about how all of this affects us in the workplace. And I did make some notes, and I'll get to that, in a little bit. So millennials born 1981 through 1996, kindness meant to them emotional awareness. This generation brought feelings into the conversation. I think that's very, very important. Validate emotions, very important. Be inclusive, important. Speak openly, very important. Kindness became more verbal and expressive. I'm right with them. Generation Z, born between 1997 and 2012, kindness was safety and authenticity. Gen Z is highly attuned to emotional and mental health. Be real, be aware, don't cause harm. So kindness includes language, boundaries, and identity awareness. Yeah, and you know what? This explains why every generation defines kindness based on what they lacked, what they needed to survive, what they were allowed to express. That's why people often misread each other. One generation's kindness looks cold to another's looks overly sensitive. And I was thinking about this and I said the first thing we should do, we should learn how every generation thinks. And that's not a big deal to do that. I just didn't have my finger on that pulse. But now I do. And that makes sense to me because especially in the workforce where we work with all different ages, everywhere, just about. We have certain misunderstandings because most workplaces, tension isn't about skill, attitude, or effort. It's about how different generations interpret behavior. Each generation believes their way is respectful and is often shocked when it's received as the opposite. And I get that. And I promise you, I will have more shows on this because I didn't have my finger on the pulse. I said that before. And that this makes all sense. I had a conversation over the weekend where it was said, kindness doesn't need to be discussed. Kindness is just done, doesn't need to be discussed. Just do it. And I couldn't quite understand that. And I had to, as you know me, I had to think about everything and it has to make sense to me. And after I researched it and thought about it, it does make sense. So then when you open up one thing, it opens up another door, as you know, when you start something. So I like to give you an example on the no feedback manager. So here's the situation. You have a baby boomer or a silent generation manager who gives very little verbal feedback. And they're thinking, if there's no complaint, you're doing fine. Remember that when we were working, when I was an apprentice in the 60s, oh my God, they wouldn't say anything to us, the bosses. So if they didn't complain, I guess we were doing good. And when they called us into their office, you know how nervous we all got. Remember that? Oh, what are they going to say now? We feared. So if there's no complaint, you're doing fine. That's their thinking. I'm talking about the silent generation. So the younger employee experience, which is the millennium, the Gen Z, they feel invisible, unsure, anxious, and unappreciated. I can identify with that. This to me, between the silent generation manager and the younger employee, the millennial Gen Z, it makes all sense. That has to be somehow worked on and massaged and get out in the open. That's my take on it. So where kindness is misunderstood, the manager believes they are being respectful by not hovering. Really. The employee experiences it as emotional neglect. Hmm. I don't quite buy that with the manager. The manager believes they are being respectful by not hovering. I don't believe that. Let me just leave it at that. I rather have them I rather believe, well, it was always like that. We're there was a very strong touch of we're the boss, you are the employee, the subservient. I remember that in the older generation. I remember it, and I don't like that because that's a fear based. It was fear based. Going to work, you were in a good mood and everything. As soon as you're in that environment, it's fear based. I would never want to work in that in my environment again ever. So it's a mindset. So, but I know the employee experiences as emotional neglect. I remember that as an apprentice. I was just there. I was go to this, go to that. Um, Nothing was ever said with praise or anything. Nothing. Just when there was complaints. I don't want to grow up in a culture. I had no choice at the time. I don't even want to be in that culture, but I'm aware of it now. So what's really happening is different definitions of kindness. Older generation, leave people alone. Younger generation, acknowledge me. I can understand that. And before I go to example two, let's go for a quick break. And we're back from our break. I'm Marietta Cameron. You're listening to Life Talk with Marietta. I am Marietta, and what kindness means to me. That's our topic today. So let's go to example two. And the situation is a Gen X employee sends a short, blunt email. Okay. Please fix this by end of day. They're thinking, I'm being efficient. No drama. The younger colleague hears, that sounded cold, almost aggressive. Yes, it does. Now, this is something, this is something I would read when I read, please fix this by the end of the day, accusatory. And you made a mistake. How could you? And get it done. So it's the tone again. It's the choice of words. That's true. It's different. Could you get this done maybe by the end of the day? And putting the word maybe in is fine, even for a manager. Um, it's the kind wording, the padding. That's what I'm looking for, unless you're really ticked off. Please, when somebody writes, please fix this by the end of the day, um, everybody reads into it differently, but it's not a positive tone. So where kindness is misunderstood, Gen X equates kindness with clarity. Younger generations equate kindness with tone and softening language. So what's really happening here, one values time, the other values emotional safety. Yeah, but value and time, please fix this by end of day. Uh, uh, no, no. There has to be some adjustments made on all of this. I'm aware of this now, and I will stay on top of things. I will stay on top of all of this. So, on example 3, why are you always late? That's an issue. So the situation is the younger employee arrives a few minutes late, but stays late and delivers strong work. Older coworkers thinking showing up on time is respect. Younger employees thinking results matter more than minutes. Where kindness breaks down, the older worker feels disrespected. The younger worker feels micromanaged. So what's really happening here, two different kindness codes. The older one, reliability equals respect. And the younger one, flexibility equals trust. I like the idea as a boss myself. If I had the younger person, he or she comes a little late, a few minutes, so, but delivers exceptional work and stays late to get work done. I rather work with somebody like that. However, the older workers thinking showing up on time is respect too. Um, I have both in me. I have the older, which is the reliability equals the respect. Um, I can work with both. I have both thinking patterns inside of me. I was the worst person being on time. I got that straightened out in my life. That took some doing. I am always on time, always. Um, I do superb work and I always get the job done. So I could work with both, I have to say. And I would definitely speak to the older person. I would speak with them. And this means everything. Knowing where this thinking comes from, because you really need both. And it's not always those, reliability, respect, flexibility, trust. It's in one person. But it's true, it's in the delivery, because in the delivery, that's what it's all about. And he or she doesn't mind staying to get it done. That's worth everything. So I think the older person, we can change that mindset if we're aware of it. That's what my opinion is. On to the next example, the overhelping supervisor. So here's the situation. A boomer supervisor frequently checks in. Do you need help? Are you okay? Want me to review this? Now, their intentions are, I'm being supportive. The Gen X reaction is, do you not trust me? I would have to say I would have to be on location and actually know the helping supervisor to even to have a thought on this, because it's very easy to get instantly what this person is after. They want to hurry me, they don't trust me, they want to check my work. That's very easy. It's a situational thing. So I can't really say anything on this. But kindness is misunderstood, and support feels like control to someone raised on independence. So again, over helping supervisor, I have to be on location to make an assessment. I can't just do because it's written down in my notes here. I can't tell you anything. And it has to be a locational thing. So let's go for another example. The younger employee who speaks up. I always like that. Here's the situation: a Gen Z employee questions a process in the meeting. Older leadership hears insubordination. The Gen Z intention is, I'm contributing. I can see that. Where kindness is misunderstood, older generations were taught, don't challenge publicly. Younger generations were taught, speak up or nothing changes. I like what the young person is doing. Um, we are always asked in the corporate world, in business, as an employee, give your contribution, your thoughts, your experience matters. Unless you're being told right up front, look, this is how it's going to go, and don't question it, just do it. Well, in a case like that, I couldn't be working there because that's not me. So I think this topic has to be addressed or should be addressed in form of little workshops in companies to really get it out in the air and to really see, to make it as a fun exercise, um, to really see how things like that would be interpreted. It could be done in form of a questionnaire, a fun thing. So it's not like, okay, we want to know how you think. I'm not saying that. That's stupid. But to do it as a fun type of thing, um, um, or as a game type of thing, to get this information, or at an outing, or just ask people for their thoughts on certain things. Question and answer type of thing, and give answers. Is it A, B, C, or D? And nobody has to give their name. That's what I don't want to micromanage that now, but this can be done in a fun way. But it brings it closer together, and you see how people are thinking. So it's incredible. I remember when I was younger, I was in my 20s, 30s, I was in the workforce. I didn't think much of um, people's ages. Okay, there were various departments. There was the hardware department, the sales department, and the people were of different ages. They were not all in their teens and 20s, and you know, they were, 30, 40, 50, 60. We never thought of it. They were Joe, they were Anna, they were this, and we only cared about the interaction. Were they nice? Were they not nice? Were they helpful? Not helpful. But we never judged them by, oh, they're not doing things fast enough or they don't understand us. No, we worked together in companies, in various departments, and we had interactions, and they were great. They were fine. We never thought of, oh yeah, they're 55 years old, they can do the job, or we never dissected the ages. Never even entered my mind. So, but as I'm getting older in life and immersing myself in different topics, and mine was kindness, I had to dig a little deeper. And yes, this generational thinking and what we're passing on came up. I said, oh my God, it makes so much sense. So let me just go for a quick break. I'll be right back. I'm back. I'm Mariette Camber, and you're tuned into Life Talk with Mariette. Today it's about what kindness means to me. And we were just discussing the various generations, how they grew up and what was important and what kindness meant to them. And I say, oh my God, everybody needs to know that as a checklist, as a checklist. So we know what the scoop is as a checklist. Again, older generations were taught, don't challenge publicly. Younger generations were taught, speak up or nothing changed. So, the deeper truth about generational thinking at work. Every generation enters the workforce shaped by economics, economic realities, parenting styles, technology, survival strategies. What looks like disrespect, laziness, oversensitivity, coldness is often adaptation, not attitude. I got to read this more than one time. I have to let that sit a little bit. I'll repeat it. What looks like disrespect, laziness, oversensitivity, or even coldness is often adaptation, not attitude. And why this matters for kindness, kindness at work today means pausing before interpreting behavior, asking instead of assuming, translating intent across generations, not correcting people, but understanding their operating system. Well, understanding their operating system means you got to know how these four generations think. I never heard anybody talk like that, but it's true. So, most workplace conflicts isn't personal. It's generational translation gone wrong. I say yes to that. I would welcome your feedback. Always get back to us, write to us under info@kmareducation.org. I have it right on the screen now. info@kmareducation.org. Kmar is spelled like Kmart without the T, kmareducation.org. So, and let's switch a little bit. It's still in the same family. We're talking about kindness, but so you really, really, really hear it. I want to take you over to the senior living facilities and the hospitals. We have in the senior assisted living, we have the caretakers, the angels, I call them. When we go to the hospital, we have the nurses, also angels. What I'm saying and why I'm calling them angels is because they chose that profession and work with people day in, day out. And here's what, and I want to read this first. This is one of my first notes. When we understand what residents bring with them, we stop judging behavior and start appreciating the people who manage it with steadiness and respect. Oh, and this is what I want to say right up front. In assisted living, caretakers don't just care for people. They care for everything those people carry. It touched me so much. Just as one line. In assisted living, caretakers don't just care for people. They care for everything those people carry. It's a lot. Anyway, let me get started. Now, the core reality in assisted living, people are not meeting each other at their best. Residents bring history, loss, fear, pride, habits, and pain. So caretakers must bring the skills of steadiness, restraint, and humanity every single day. And I like to give you some examples. I have the resident who controls the schedule. He or she, it's a he in this case, insists on being helped at the exact same time every morning and becomes angry if it changes. And of course, it changes. They might be 5 minutes late or 10 minutes late or 5 minutes early. Things happen. People are out, people are on vacation, people are sick, people have to do double duties. Absolutely. That's the rhythm in these establishments. I never worked in any of these establishments, but I know that. I just know it. It's common sense. So what they bring is a lifetime of control and routine. Loss of that control feels like chaos. That's how that resident feels. Chaos. It would be harder for me, but that's not what I'm talking about. It would be harder for me if I was still in the work life, and I am in the work life still, if every day I would have to shift something. I would have to go out of my way to do my work. Maybe I have to get in the car and be at a different location. Um, no, I can change quite a bit, but I can't change. But to give you an example, I have a home office. If my work entailed going to 7 different places during the workday, I would say, okay, I can do that. So what I couldn't do, and I adjust to that. It's no problem. I go from A through B, and so forth, and in the geographical area, no problem. I can do that. I wouldn't mind doing that. Then you might ask me to do something different or a combination of two. Okay, if I'm not stretching myself too thin, I would do it too. But there's a limit with everybody. So I understand a lifetime of control and routine where they got things done. I'm talking about the resident person. They got things done on their time, on their timeline and routine. And now they have to wait for others. And not that that matters if they need help putting their pants on or their shirt or getting their breakfast or whatever it may be. It's the point of it. It doesn't matter if you wait 10 more minutes to get your pants on or your socks and the shoes. But to them, it is. It's a mindset. And I understand it. What the caretaker brings, consistency. They learn the routine. They learn their routine, and it matters more than efficiency. So the point is predictability restores dignity. I get it. I get it. If you can't help yourself anymore or you're limited with that, it's very tough to wait you have your own rhythm. But that person also has never learned patience. Because if that component would be in there, if the person had that component, they would behave differently. So, but no, it almost sounds like there's no room for anything. Yeah, that's tough. That's a very tough. I wouldn't want a mindset like that. So the resident, next story, the resident who criticizes everything, complains about food, staff, noise, temperature. So what they bring with them is disappointment with their body, their life, and where they ended up. I can feel for them. What the caretaker brings is emotional distance without emotional coldness. I repeat that. Emotional distance without emotional coldness. They don't argue, they don't correct, they keep showing up. So the point is the caretakers absorb frustration without becoming it. That's very tough because they're human. They're human. And you see them every single day, and it's the same thing all the time. You know, that's why I call them angels. And especially if they're in that field for 20, 25 years, it's a tough field. Okay, let's move on to the third story. The silent resident. Rarely speaks, rarely asks for help. What they bring is a generation raised not to be burden, not to be a burden. We've had shows like that where people, our LifeTalk contributors said, we were raised, don't talk unless you're being spoken to. Um, they took our voices. They expected us to grow up as a nothing, as a child being a nothing. Okay, what the caretaker brings is attentiveness without intrusion. They notice small changes, less eating, less eye contact. And the point is, silence can be learned. Silence can be a learned survival strategy. Yeah, it's interesting. Interesting to know all of this. Okay, story 4. The resident who was once in charge, used to run a business or a household, talks down to the staff, and what they bring with them is identity loss. I get it. What the caretaker brings, calm authority without confrontation. They say, let's do this together. And the point is, respect doesn't require submission. I like that. When I put these shows together, I'm on the sideline. I have a pretty good idea where I would fit in. And it might not be in assisted living. As a matter of fact, I know it's not. Um, I would still want to be active. If I can be of help to anybody within the organization, whether I answer phones or I fold napkins or I do a newsletter, and maybe there's some like-minded people within the organizations that are still, fit and enjoy uh, um, a task. It would be task or let's say a mission. When you do a little newsletter on a monthly and keep it going, that's a little mission that can be quite important. Um, I don't think I would fit into a structure. I really don't. So let me just leave it at that right now. Because the people that work there, I call them the angels, and they're not all angels. And if I paid good money monthly, and I would be confronted with that person every single day, and there's nothing I can do about it, except say, don't even send them to the room to take my vitals or to give me breakfast or whatever. I may not have a voice, and I may see that person every single day. Or I may be with people that I don't even like. I don't know. But I do know it might not be for me. So that's okay. The resident who is angry in the morning snaps during morning care, and what they bring is pain, stiffment, and embarrassment. So what the caretaker brings is timing awareness. They slow down in the morning, speed up later. So the point is kindness adjusts to physical reality. I get it. On to the next story. The resident who never says thank you receives help daily without acknowledgement. And what they bring, emotional depletion or shame. Really? Okay. What the caretaker brings is internal validation. They don't wait for gratitude. The point is, caretakers redefine what success looks like. But just think from story to story what they're dealing with every single day. Oh my God. Now, here's the resident who tests boundaries, makes inappropriate comments or demands. What they bring is loneliness, confusion, or entitlement learned long ago. I always knew as I was younger, I always kind of wondered why some of the older people are the way they are. This was my me wondering when I was in my 20s and 30s, 40s, and something like that. And I said, age doesn't always change them rapidly. That, oh, they were the nicest person during, their younger years, and all of a sudden they become ugly in their behavior and their tone and everything. I never believed that. But what I do believe, because I have the knowledge, you will get what you learned in life, meaning you will see that person, somebody who's 75 or 80, and somebody who's really aware, has done a lot in their life, has helped a lot of people, and has gone through personal growth and everything. They have a total different mindset, and they're still active. That's why I put the rare breed together. Um, the rare breed is about people that are still alive inside. And I'll get to that on the screen. So, okay, the resident who tested boundaries. Okay, it is what it is here in this case. I wouldn't know. I wouldn't know what to do with all of this. I wouldn't know. What can you do? I think the caretaker, should be here talking to me. I have one more story, a resident who repeats the same story. Now we know that. There are people right now that are not in assisted living and they're in their 50s, 60s, they repeat the same story, even in their 40s. Well, they tell the same memory again and again. It's like a broken record. And what they bring is a need to be seen and remembered. What the caretaker brings, patience. They don't correct, they listen. The point is, memory is identity. I had a person I worked with for 14 years. For the first 5, 6 years, that's all he did. Repeated oh my God. I said, doesn't he know anything else? And I was surprised. Then when I got to know him better, uh, he could stop that broken record. But that's how oh my God. I know it's annoying, but people do it not just because they're older. There are other people doing it too in different ages. Okay, so we're going for another break and we'll be right back. And we're back. I'm Mariette Camera, Life Talk with Mariette. You're listening to What Kindness Means to Me. That's what the topic is. Again, I want to say, in regards to assisted living, caretakers don't just care for people, they care for everything those people carry. And I wouldn't want to do that because That can be very heavy. What just one person went through in their life. So let me just see. And here's another thing. I just want to make reference to kindness. I had to learn. And I said the other day to a person who said, "Oh, kindness, you just do it, you don't talk about it." I said, "Really?" I said, "How can a person be kind if they never experience, it was never modeled to them when they grew up?" They grew up with love-hate relationship, and as they grew older, that's the behavior they have. So love hate doesn't have room for kindness. Yeah, you're fighting more than anything else. And I was in a situation like that for a while when in my younger years, till I recognized that I had a lot of good people in my life who I didn't treat very fairly. And once you become aware of the loss, what you're really doing, that's that was a moment that was a moment where I really changed. I looked at it differently, and I was very, very sorry. So it took time. And then I was able to also recognize that I have choices. But first you gotta address that love hate, the feeling. They're like an elevator, these ropes, they're going up and down, when the elevator goes up and down, that's what happens inside of you. Now, beginning of the show, I said some people have kindness in them because it was modeled. Mom and dad modeled it. And it's just a natural thing that the kids saw, the kids adopted to, and it became a lifestyle for you. A lot of people are not like that. They didn't have that upbringing. So, and I also said in the conversation, it's not always possible to be kind. Oh, yeah. Oh, yes, it is. I said, no, it's not. Because what about if you're hurting? Let's say you're in pain. You're in pain. You're already worried for 2 days. You didn't call the doctor, and doctor isn't available. And then you go to the emergency room. You're full of anxiety. You're full of pain. Now you're going to the hospital. Can't find a parking lot. They drop you off in the front. You walk in there, and you're being met by somebody who's not the friendliest at the desk. Have insurance? So instead of being met with kindness, with a soft tone word, how can we help you today? What can I do? Would you like some water? Would you want to sit down here? Tell me, what can I do for you? No, you're being met with a different tone. That can set me off very quickly. So, and that's when we start our anxiety and pain comes out. That means we're not being kind. I understand that. I stand by that. I've done it. When you feel aggravated, somebody's poking you, and you're not saying anything. That's why I'm highly against when somebody says, "Oh, don't say anything, keep your mouth shut." What do you mean, keep my mouth shut? Nobody has ever said that to me. But no, their style was they're going through life, keep your mouth shut, and everything will work itself out. No, 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 that doesn't work for me. That's the other generation. That's not me. So, but I've been in a situation where I was with my adult kids and I didn't want to say, I didn't want to speak up. It was in a restaurant because they would have said, "Ma, you embarrass us." So I didn't say anything. And you know what happened? I couldn't hold it for a long time inside of me. The next person that came to the table, which was the water person again, he got it. He said, um, "Would you want me to take your plates?" No. It was in my tone, and I apologized to him when he came again to the table. You know, I apologized to him in front of everybody. I said, "This really didn't belong to you." And I apologize, and it was really felt from my heart. So, what I'm saying is, we can still have kindness, structured kindness, meaning it's in us, but there's different situations when we're hurting, when we're being pushed, when we're this, the kindness takes a back seat. And we're human beings for that. So, in closing, when we talk about kindness, we often imagine it as something easy. But in assisted living, kindness is tested every day. People don't arrive there empty. They bring their generation, their upbringing, their pride, their pain, and their disappointments. Some were taught to stay silent. Some were taught to just keep going. Some never learned how to ask for help. Caretakers meet all of that daily. And so are nurses. I just didn't get to finish that story. That's for another show. So the nurses are saints too. I'll get to you in another show. So they bring steadiness when others bring frustration. They bring boundaries so care doesn't turn into harm. They bring patience when kindness is hard to reach. And none of us are exempt. Pain, fear, and loss narrow all of us. Kindness isn't who we are when life is easy. It's what we manage to hold onto when it isn't. Till next time, I'm Mariette Cameron.